Thank you. My name's Jayzen, Patria, class of 91, and I am a keynote speaker, facilitator, and consultant. And what my passion is helping people find their authentic brand voice so that they can bring their full selves to work, and in your case, school and college admissions process, so that you can really shine and be who you are and get what you want out of life. So people always ask me how I got into this business, and the funny story is that I actually worked for NBC Universal for 25 years. So about a year and a half ago, I launched my own business as a keynote speaker. I worked with NBC Universal and all of these great brands. I'm sure you guys have consumed or used some of those brands. I actually spent the first half of my career at Universal Studios theme parks, both in Hollywood, and then opened Universal Studios Japan out in Osaka when I lived there for a couple of years back in 2000, 2001. And then when General Electric bought Universal Studios and merged it with NBC to create NBC Universal, I actually moved to NBC Universal Corporate to lead leadership and executive development with NBC Universal, and then that company was bought like a gazillion times. So the most recent ownership was with Comcast, and I got a chance from Comcast to create the ultimate corporate university for people in media, which we call the NBC Universal Talent Lab. So people always ask me, what does like an HR guy, even though I never really told people that's what I did, but technically I worked in HR for the majority of my career, why does an HR guy love brands? And some of the cool things that I got to do when I worked at NBC Universal was work with amazing executives and chief marketing officers in that organization to do business transformation. So if you guys know Bravo or Telemundo or NBC stations or Oxygen, I helped them over multiple years work on business transformation, and in all of those cases, that transformation was about how do we actually reinvent ourselves so that the audience loves us, watches us, and then we get more money because advertisers that pay us based on the number of eyeballs. So I got a chance to really sit in these like really unique experiences to learn from chief marketing officers. And one of my big aha moments was all of the people who work in HR that talk about personal branding are complete BS, because everything that they talk about is like the exact opposite of what the chief marketing officers would say about those huge premium stellar brands that are out in the market space. So I decided I needed to really build something to help people use what real marketers use to build their own professional brands. And then I've had a chance to do some fun branding work as well. I actually built NBC Universal's Talent Lab as the first branded corporate university, so we treated it in a way that was just like a TV network or a film studio. Did all of NBC Universal's diversity and inclusion branding for their employee resource groups, including OUT, which I led for about 12 years. I did the branding for the Los Angeles LGBT Center, which I'm on the board of, so they're the largest LGBT nonprofit, and just earlier this year worked with the Denver LGBT Center to work on their brand. So I'm obsessed with brands. Who's obsessed with brands here?
Yes.
Some of you? Okay, so I know you're eating pizza so you can eat, but you have to stand up and you have to talk to someone here. So everybody stand up, you can continue to eat pizza, that's okay. I want you to find a partner and I want you to say, what is your favorite brand and why? What's your favorite brand and why?
What's your favorite brand?
Let me hear. Shout out some of the brands that you talked about or you heard about. Apple.
Tesla.
Tesla. What else?
Crocs.
iPod. REI. Very good. So, well, who said Tesla? So why did you own a Tesla?
No.
Katie drives it to school.
If anyone's in my, I don't think anyone here is in my econ class. I don't know. But I hate the company. Like it's dumb. Like shouldn't exist for like math reasons. But they've done a really good job of like making them, like Elon Musk has done a really good job of making them like, when people think of like innovation and like the future of transportation and like the way we do business, a lot of people, like, I don't know, like Tesla is one of the things that people that will come to mind because of like what they've done and how they've sold
They
themselves.
went to the moon, didn't they, or went to
Yeah,
the
right.
orbit?
Well, so, and that's like a great example of the power of brand, right? So you don't have a Tesla, but when you think of innovation or forward thinking, oh, come on in, grab pizza, guys, that's ultimately what a brand is, right? That's what we remember. Who said
We
Apple? I
understand
heard
that
someone
could be
say.
said.
Raise your hand if you also said Apple. You guys said Apple. So why are you obsessed with Apple?
I'm not like obsessed with it, but I feel like I've definitely like stayed true to buying Apple products.
So how many are in your home? Did you finish counting?
I got distracted listening to other people, but I'll let you know.
A phone, computer, an iPad, right? All don't count devices, not accessories, right? But it's crazy, right? Apple has tons of fanatics. In fact, yeah, we keep getting new phones. So what is this? It's an iPhone. What product category is this? It's a smartphone, right? But we actually have to think through it because we're so clear that this is an iPhone, we don't even think of what product category it is. And think about this, so Apple is a huge, amazing tech company that people stand in line to go to a brick and mortar store to buy a new phone when it comes out. Like, of all companies, Apple doesn't even need to have a real store, but people are so fanatical about Apple products that they go there. So why do we love the iPhone, if you're an iPhone person?
It's
It's
synced
simple,
with everything.
it's easy, it works with everything, what else?
And everything controls our lives.
Absolutely, right? And so when we think about it, it feels like iPhone's the obvious choice. But if we go to Consumer Reports, you guys know what Consumer Reports is, right? If you go to consumerreports.com, if we look up the iPhone, it's not best in class in any single category that we would measure a smartphone. Like, it doesn't have the best battery, right? Because I literally walk around with a charger all day long, like at the airport and everywhere, I'm sure you do. It's a closed system, so for techies, you know, you never want to be on a closed system. It doesn't have the best camera, it doesn't have the best screen, doesn't have the best anything. Yet, how much does an iPhone 10 cost? Over $1,000. Over $1,000. They're making the best profit margin off of basically what you guys said their brand is. It's easy, it's cool, and it works with everything. And at the core, that's what Apple has been all about. So my mom was an educator. My mom taught at LA Unified School District for 30 years. So when I went to Poly, we got our first computer was the Apple IIc computer, and my mom bought it for 2 reasons. One was because Apple said, we care about education. And so they gave it to a lot of public schools, right? So that was a computer that a lot of kids grew up on, using it in school. They also said, we love creative people. So we're gonna service the creative class of people, which is why we actually think today they look cool, because they're always looking at what do graphic designers want? What does anyone who's going to use in photography want? What platforms are they going to want to use? It has to appeal to them. And that it was simple, because the Apple IIc was a box and it only had 4 things in it. It had a monitor, a CPU that had BASIC built in, which is like an ancient computer language, right? But it was the first time a computer you could just turn it on and it worked, and then it had a plug to the wall and a plug to connect the monitor, and it worked within like 3 minutes of opening the box. It was that simple, and it worked with everything that's there. And ultimately, that's what Apple is still about today. So when you go to the workforce, you guys will be lucky because you can get an iPhone from your employer. But even 10 years ago, you couldn't get an iPhone from your employer. You had to get a BlackBerry, because an iPhone didn't support corporate security, and Apple didn't even do corporate selling in a significant way. But basically employees revolted and came to their employer and said, you know what, I'll just have my own phone because I don't even want your BlackBerry. It's so sucky, the BlackBerry is so sucky, I'm gonna just use my own iPhone and I'll even pay for it, I don't care, but I'm gonna start accessing corporate stuff on my own personal phone. And Apple said, okay, well you guys can figure it out, corporations, figure out how to do security on iOS because you're not our target audience, right? The direct creative employees were, and that's really sort of the power of what brands are all about. Who's obsessed with this brand? Okay, how many did you have in the past 24 hours?
Nothing in the past 24 hours, but usually I have like one day.
Okay, one a day, right? Do any of you have parents that consume like multiple a day?
Yeah.
Like your parents are addicted? Are you, how many do
Yeah,
you?
my mom,
Your mom?
Yeah.
So how many times does she go?
probably, well, in twice maybe.
Yeah, twice, but twice is a lot, right? Because how much is an average Starbucks beverage? It's like $5, right? And so I travel like about 150,000 miles a year when I'm doing speaking gigs, and I see people like lined up at the airport ready to miss their flight to get Starbucks, even though every kiosk in the airport has coffee, right? And it's $5. So how much is a gallon of gas?
$4?
$3.50, sometimes it's $4, but if it's $4, it's like the sky is falling, right? Like you get push notifications on your phone that's like, here's where the cheapest gas is in your neighborhood. And like the news has a like, oh my gosh, it's almost $4 a gallon and people are going crazy. But we spend $5 for a cup of Starbucks and no one's complaining about it. So the gas that gets your butt to school and work and a paycheck and drives your kids to soccer practice and right, all of those things, like we complain about $4 for a gallon of gas, but no one complains about $5 for 6 ounces of coffee. Now this is why brand I think is really powerful if you use all of these tools for yourself, is coffee is the world's oldest commodity. So it's like the first thing that as humans we traded in markets. And what we know is when you're a commodity, it's always about who has it for the lowest price. What Starbucks basically did is, how do we take the world's oldest commodity and put value and premium in it so that people actually want to pay more? So it used to be tradition in American history, in American culture, you used to be able to go to any restaurant or diner in America, and depending on what era or generation it was, you could get a bottomless cup of coffee for like a dime, a quarter, or 50 cents. Like complete refills, you could sit there all day long, and today, like you get one beverage for $5 and no one complains about it. And that's like the power of great brands. So let me ask you guys, you've been to a Starbucks before, what does Starbucks really sell if I told you that they didn't really sell coffee? Of what? Of what though? What are they really selling?
There's something like being like artsy and like hipstery and like, I don't know, like I feel like they're selling being like productive but in like a modern way.
Yeah, right? Yeah, what about you?
I think they're selling like a stratified class at a low price point. So you could like spend $5 on your Starbucks and feel like you've assimilated into another like social class just because you bought like a
So it's like aspirational, right?
Yeah.
So here's the whole thing. The co-creator of Starbucks, he did foreign exchange in Italy in both high school and then did stuff in college there. So his vision for Starbucks was, I want Starbucks to be a community coffee house like in Europe where it smells like great coffee and people come in and they live and they do their work and it's this great meeting place. And so if you go into a Starbucks today, what's in almost every Starbucks that is about those things? Chargers, desks, right? Like they don't ask you to leave unless you're in Philadelphia and a person of color, right? That's a whole separate thing. Bathrooms, free Wi-Fi, right? All of those things are designed in. And do they have employees that work there? What is it? They have baristas, right? They created their entire language, right? They created a fake Latin language for like their sizes, right? I just looked, they started serving like food from something called a mercato, right? Like they've created their own romance language for Starbucks because that's what great brands do is they create a great experience that's what we actually enjoy and then that's what we're willing to pay more for. So when I think of you guys, as you enter the college admissions process, as you enter the workforce, what branding can do that it does for corporations is really getting people to do more, contribute more, and pay more for you. So the reality that like no one ever says is when you go out into the job market, even though there's a salary band, where you get paid in that is how important people think and valuable people think your brand is. That you're getting on the high end versus the low end is all about that. And when you're at work or when you're at school and you're working on projects, that people are willing to do more, contribute more, give their discretionary effort to help you is all about what they see as the worth of your brand. So if I asked you guys what's a brand anyways, how would you define what a brand is?
The way you present something.
Okay, the way you present something. Good, what else? This is the audience participation part.
It's like what's beyond the product.
Okay, yeah, what's beyond the product? I like that. What else? Yeah.
It ends up being a succinct way to tell customers why you're doing what you're doing.
Oh, I love that, right? A succinct way to tell people what you're about and what you're doing, yeah.
Or something like characteristic that's not the product, I guess, or it could be the product.
Yeah, characteristics. So let's look at what I would say a brand is not. So when you work on your own personal and professional branding, these are the things that are kind of pitfalls where even companies do this. They think that a brand's a logo or a tagline or an ad or a product. And the reality is a brand is none of these things. In fact, what the brand is, and this isn't the end-all be-all, but it's a sum of all of the experiences, the information, and expectations that define an organization or offering, or I would even say us, to a target audience, right? It's the sum of all of those things. So what's that a picture of?
Those
Is it Braille?
Yeah, so it's DNA,
Oh.
right? Of course, like, if we're older, we're like, it's a Scantron, right? Or all those crazy things, right? So it's DNA. So when you think about it, a brand should really be the DNA that informs all of the other things. So a brand should be the DNA that informs what a logo is, a tagline, an ad, or a product. So you guys see this, who likes this brand? Yes, so what does Nike sell? Okay, yeah, shoes, athletic wear, but what is it that they really sell?
Sports.
Athleticism, sports, what else?
Physical excellence.
Physical excellence, what else?
Celebrity.
Celebrity, what type of celebrity though?
Basketball, celebrity.
Right, like a celebrity, an athlete
Yes.
celebrity, right?
Yeah.
They sell winning, they sell overcoming obstacles, they sell being your personal best, they sell taking a stand
Just
for things, right? And so when we think about that, that's what Nike's brand DNA is, whoops, then all of these things are not a mystery, right? So the swoosh is actually about winning, athleticism, moving forward in a logo. The tagline, just do it, is all about that. I actually did this conversation at a group, and one of the gals from Nike, formerly from Nike branding in the 80s when they came up with that was, and I said, you guys probably never thought that just do it was like an evergreen thing. And she was like, you're right, we thought it was like a 3-year campaign, but it was so on brand for them. It's something that has lasted over 30 years for them. Or an advertisement, right? So if they have a transgender marathon runner or a veteran that has prosthetic limbs in one of their TV commercials, playing basketball, or even their controversial choice for Colin Kaepernick, right? When you think about it, if we said that that was what their brand is, the Colin choice isn't actually that controversial, right? It's actually right on for what their brand is and who they serve. So I like to look at this as, it's easy for us to say like, oh, I'm going into college admissions, or I'm going to get like my first job, so, you know, I'll just get a new outfit. That's kind of like, you know, doing a new logo. I'm gonna change my email signature, right? That's like kind of just doing a new tagline. It's really that you have to go from the authenticity of who you are and what we experience. So this is Branding 101. Obviously we don't have time on our short lunch to go through all of these, but it's something for you to think about is great brands are all about serving a particular audience. So as you come up to probably what your next big goal is through the college admissions process is you actually need to start thinking about your brand in terms of who are the decision makers and who does that brand really need to resonate, because it may not just really be my peers, it may be particular people at colleges and universities that you're working with. It may be your great folks that work in college relations or college admissions here at Poly, right? Like what's the brand that they have, or what is it that they think of you, and how are they gonna advocate to great colleges and universities on your behalf? Then what we'll talk about is some of this, know what you stand for today and refine who you want to be. So the reality here is, it says how you operate is what really defines how you lead with your brand. So people come up to me all of the time and they're like, oh, I want to do your branding thing because I don't have a brand. What do you think my response is when they say I don't have a brand?
Yes, we do.
Yes, you do, and why?
Because everybody does have a brand.
Yeah, so the bottom line is everyone has a brand. What really matters is, are you consciously competent in knowing what your brand is? And are you leading with it in terms of your actions and behaviors every single day? Or are you just going through the day and being defined by random actions that you haven't put thought to? So what I want you guys to think about is, great brands are also authentic brands. So you guys probably see this. If you're trying to be something that you're not, we can all pretty much see through that, right? Especially in like a social digital space where we see each other all of the time, whether we're in physical proximity or not. We can smell when someone's being like super inauthentic and trying to be something that they're not. So really great branding is taking who you are authentically and turning up the volume. So here's what I want you to do. What adjectives describe you? So everybody stand up. Stand up, find a new person. Here's what I'm gonna do. As my computer flips out.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't go for it.
So here's my question. Share with your partner, if you were a type of car, what type of car would you be and why? If you were a type of car, who heard someone say a really great car and you were like, oh, that's exactly you?
LaFerrari.
Exactly what it
Okay, so it was hers.
She was like, I'm a Mercedes.
Okay, so what's your name?
That's so
Chanel.
Chanel. So she's all about premium brands here, right? Her parents have projected that on. So Chanel, you said a Mercedes, and why would you be like a Mercedes if you were a car?
Because it's like hella bougie.
Hella bougie, what else? What else? Help her out. What else did she say?
She said, and because it's pretty.
Okay, it's pretty. What else?
The logo looks nice.
Okay, the logo looks nice. It's sleek.
High performance.
High performance, right? So when you think about it, those can all be, those are defining attributes of the Mercedes brand, but that could also be Chanel's brand as well, right? So what I want you to do right now is think of at least one or two adjectives or descriptors that describe you as a leader here at Poly, as a student, as an individual, and maybe it could be based on that car one. So take 30 seconds in your mind, think of one or two. Okay, on three, come back in, choose at least one word, and on three I want everyone to yell it out, okay? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Okay, so what was yours?
Dreamer.
Okay, dreamer. So, here's the great thing. That could be a great brand attribute. And remind me your name.
Aiden.
Aiden. So, if I spent all last week with you and I followed you with a reality film crew, what would I see and hear you do last week? What would I have seen or heard you done last week that I would say, wow, Aiden, he's a dreamer?
Working hard.
Starring in a play.
Starring in a play.
Okay, so tell me more specifically about being in the play. What about being in the play was being a dreamer?
I guess it just gets my hopes up about the future, and hopefully I could do a lot of great things in the future, I guess.
Awesome.
And it's inspiring me to become a better actor.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So who's worked with Aiden before? Or, right, you're all
I just
students,
saw
been in
him.
class, you just saw him. But when Aiden's not on stage, what are some things that you've seen or heard him do that you would say, wow, he really is a dreamer? He's laughing, what else? He goes out to get the role that he wants in a play, right? You aspire to be an actor.
Yeah, he rehearses his lines a lot. I remember that. There's a lot of right on the side of the stage, walking back and forth, practicing the lines.
He's
Right.
active in class.
Active, envisioning, right? So here's the whole thing. As you come up with these words, you really need to peel the onion and say, what is it that people can see and hear me do every single day that I can actually lead and live that brand, Right now, how many other folks would say that, oh, dreamer, that could describe me? Anyone? Okay, a couple folks, that's a unique one. Here's where I say you guys need, this is your homework. One, I want you to come up with 5 to 8 words that are your descriptors of your brand, right? In the same way that we said Nike was like winning and athletic and all of those things. You want to come up with that for you, but here's the whole thing. Most of those words I'm going to say are probably commodity words. So I want you guys to turn up the volume on those, and in fact, once you have those words, or at least one, I want you to supersize that word and make it super, super big and ownable. Or even, and dreamer might already be supersized, and then even, how do you, whoops, my computer freaks out, right? How do you even make it a superpower? So I'm gonna give you guys a hint. This is what I look at for my own brand. So over working for a long time, and even if we go back to when I went to Poly, some of these work, right? It's like I know a lot about media, I'm entertaining, I'm a good presenter, I'm innovative, networked, I have a lot of LGBT knowledge that people call on, and I'm well-traveled, right? So if I look at it, those are the attributes that I use for my brand. Raise your hand if you would use 3 of those to describe yourself. Okay, so like 40% of the room says like 3 of those things you could own yourself. So that means to me, that's not really uniquely Jayzen, right? So if I'm gonna supersize and turn these into superpowers, then here's what they actually become. I think of myself as a storyteller, Hollywood, a showman, a first mover, a super connector, an advocate, and a jet setter. Right? So suddenly those become like, all together, that feels, wow, that's pretty uniquely Jayzen. So here's what I want you to do. Go back to your partner really quick. I want you to try and take your word and supersize it and turn it into a superpower right now, and Curious. Can you supersize it?
That's not even a city.
It can be any word, you can make it up, it's your language.
Queen of the Jungle.
Alright, so let me hear real quick, did anyone supersize it?
Lighthearted.
Flaming dumpster fire, right?
That's like my brand.
That's your brand. This is your whole thing. Your homework is I want you to come up with 5 to 8 words and supersize them to be uniquely you. Because then every single day when you come home from school, you can say, hey, was I Hollywood? Did I show up as a super connector, as a storyteller, a showman? Whatever your words are, that gets to be your thing. And that's how you're gonna lead with your brand. So thank you guys so much.